Hello, children. Let's give our attention to Daniel chapter 2 today. We have already seen the principles involved in chapter 1 and about the education of Daniel and his friends. In Daniel 1, we see Nebuchadnezzar as the conqueror of Israel. But in chapter 2, we look at him as the king of nations, the ruler over all the earth. The history of Babylon is the story of the great controversy between Christ and Satan. This began in heaven, is continued on the earth, and it will end only when Jesus comes and establish his own kingdom on this earth. Satan, Lucifer, the fallen angel, accused God that he is unfair. He claimed for a fair chance to be given him. He said he can prove that he can establish a better kingdom on earth which will excel the glory of the kingdom in heaven. You know what? The King of the universe, our dear Lord, gave him that chance. Satan chose the plains of Shinar. The people whom God had told to fill the whole earth were gathered into a city. Babylon grew, started by Nimrod and reaching its peak in the times of Nebuchadnezzar. Its mighty walls were 350 feet high and 87 feet thick. Its massive gates of brass were designed to imitate the strength of the city of God. Satan's design to imitate the city of God, to counterfeit the plans of God. This earthly city was patterned after the heavenly. Just like the river of life flowed from the throne of God, river Euphrates flowed through Babylon. The government here was absolute monarchy. A man occupied the throne and tyranny took the place of love. This is always true when man is exalted above God. There was a close union between the state and the religion of the state. It was the king's heart which determined the rules and the religion. Babylon ruled the earth. It was the king of all nations. Not only in power, but the wisdom also, Nebuchadnezzar was incomparable. He was exceedingly great in the education that he had received. He tried to educate the people of Babylon. He made Babylon the center of education for the whole earth. Every art and science was taught in the schools of Babylon. The people studied astronomy and higher mathematics and languages of all nations. The king himself was highly educated. He was the one who examined the students on the completion of their course and he granted them their degrees. Babylon was proud of her educational system. In this Babylonian court, the education of the world was confounded as foolish by the wisdom of the Almighty through a young man called Daniel, a youth not over 21 years of age. How did this happen? King Nebuchadnezzar had a dream. But why did God give Nebuchadnezzar a dream? How could the God of heaven reveal truths to this heathen king? Doubtless he could not during his waking moments, because Nebuchadnezzar was so filled with self, he cannot understand the heavenly language. But Nebuchadnezzar often contemplated the future of his kingdom. He knew that life was short and that soon he will die. This was the line of thought of Nebuchadnezzar, and this was God's opportunity. And while those proud eyes were closed to earthly things, while self was lost, dead almost, the future history of the world was spread before Nebuchadnezzar. On getting up, he found no language to express his thoughts. He was not acquainted with the language of heaven. He knew the wisdom of the world, but not that of heaven. This he had never been taught. He tried to think what he had seen, but as his eyes again rested on the glory about him, the vision of glory from heaven faded away. Earthly things drew a veil over his face, and he knew he had seen something very important, but he did not know what it was. We know what follows. The king demanded all the wise men of his realm to explain the dream to him, to tell him what he dreamt, and also to explain it. but no one was able to reveal the meaning. We will study about the dream and its meaning in another place, but now we'll go on with the story. This was the second year of reign of Nebuchadnezzar. He had already ruled 2 years conjointly with his father. So this was his fourth year. So already Daniel had completed his 3 years of education in Babylon and he had started serving the kingdom of Babylon in some office. Now came the supreme moment of Daniel's life. When all the wisdom of the world failed, God showed that his wisdom is always greater by using a humble instrument, Daniel, a slave and a Hebrew from a faraway land. Daniel and his friends prayed, and the God of heaven heard them. He revealed the dream and its explanation. Daniel saved all the wise men of Babylon from the death decree of the king, but he took no credit to himself. He gave all glory to the King of universe, the God whom he knew so well. The king was so amazed by the secrets that were revealed to him. Daniel and his friends, Daniel was made the chief of all wise men. His companions were given high positions in the government. The history of the city of Babylon is put on record because it is God's object lesson to the world of today. The book that is so relevant to us today, the book of Revelation, mentions Babylon many a time. As God called Abraham out of Chaldea, he today calls people from the worldly Babylon. He wants teachers of the godly principles that Daniel followed. God used Daniel to confound the wisdom of the world, Babylonian court. He instructed them with principles of healthful living, which will make them mentally and physically strong. And they were. Their educational principles were proved to be far better than that of the mighty Babylon. Only a few, to be more specific, just 4 out of thousands were true to the principles of God in the days of Daniel. How is it going to be today? What are your principles? Decide, children, today to be on the Lord's side. Bye.